Alright, we're back out here again working on the Buick. We got the passenger side rail all done, tacked in, parallel with the frame center line. So now we got to start working on the driver's side frame rail. It's a little bit weird because from where I cut the passenger side rail down here, measured at the same point on the driver's side rail. It's about a 1/2 inch outboard of center line, farther than the passenger side rail. The driver's side rail is stamped different, but there's also some fish plating and stuff on this side of the driver's side rail, like it's been bent before. So what I'm going to do, and actually it'll probably work out better, is this driver's side rail starts to flare out where it was coming in for the cross member. So what I did is I pulled off center line till I hit the equal distance from our center line here. Same distance here to the center line there, center line to there, which it's a little bit farther forward, but it's probably going to work out better because it'll get me away from my steering box brackets, and then I'll just pull off of that measurement and run parallel to center line with this. So then we'll just have to make some fish plate gusset shims or something for this outside portion if it's too big of a gap to weld. So anyways, that's the plan. Got to get the cutoff wheel, cut that off, clean it up, get it ready, and then we'll get this tacked on and squared up, double check parallel, level, all that stuff. Right now the frame of the car is sitting leveled up, so I'll just run a level from the end of the frame rail to the end of the frame rail, make sure we're all kosher. Probably start putting in a cross member on the front. So we'll see how far we get and what progress we can make. Alright, so we got the stock frame rail all cleaned up, welded up, or cut and fit how we're going to do the rail. I went ahead and tacked it in place back here, put the jack under the front, set it to level. Now we're going to check our offset center line, see if we need to come in or out with this end, and then we can tack it in place, level across the front, make sure it's all level, and then I guess weld it or something. Alright, so this side we are 14 3/4. Double check, make sure it hasn't moved. 14 3/4. 13 16ths. or 12 3/4. So we got to push the nose of it out an inch. I don't know if we're going to be able to do. Where this car was wrecked before, the frame is buckled on that leading edge there. We might have to cut the front of this back a little bit to give us some room where it's tapering out. Probably take the zip disc, come back here, cut it off again so that we can pull that out straight. See where we get to there. Huh. $13 and an 8. Gained a little bit. I'm almost wondering if we cut these tacks, take a hammer and try to knock that where it's bowed in, knock it out. Because I don't want to cut back any farther on the frame horn than I have to. Should work now. Tack it back in and see. Right there. lost the camera somewhere in the welding process, but that's alright. We got the frame rails all welded in as much as we can. We'll go and we got a pie cut this top rail and fold that down. We'll re-weld all that, weld it all on, and then we're gonna build some gussets to come up the frame, tie it all in on both sides as much as we can, and then build some boxed in gussets that'll weld in over that back stuff too. Box all that in, weld it all together so it's nice and strong. I did get the wheels, the rear wheels made. So 10-inch wide hoops, 15-inch rim diameter. Found some 3/4 ton, I think they were Chevy wheels that had the right inner diameter, but I had to take them back to work and cut the centers out to fit over this Dodge axle. It had a bigger center bore, so we ended up having to trim that back out, but it was a good process learning how to do all that. So anyways, I'm pretty excited about this. Hopefully for too long we'll have her sitting back down on some wheels and tires and seeing what she looks like. Alrighty people, we are back out here in the shop getting ready to continue on the welding of the frame on the 54 Buick Gasser. I got these gussets cut out, ready to get welded on, so we're going to be doing that and prepping it for front cross member, front suspension. Alright, so first up, what we're going to do is buff off the areas of the frame where these are going to get welded on, get them cleaned up, prepped for paint, inside and outside, and then get those welded on. Then we'll figure out front cross member. Probably going to do a round bar across. I have a couple different sizes of pipe to use. I've been thinking about putting a taper on these bars, maybe just rounding the noses of them off. I don't know, we'll just have to see what speaks to me as far as that goes, but I've got them tacked in place width-wise, so we'll get these all welded on and then we can see what comes at us next. Here, go back just a little bit more. Alrighty. Okay, we got those all cleaned up, ready to be welded on, so we'll get the welder fired up and start melting some metal onto here. Alright, we got the gussets all welded on. Looks pretty good. Happy with it. So, next order of business is to figure out what we're gonna do with, sorry, my tripod's getting hung up on stuff. What we're gonna do with this section of frame. I think what we're gonna end up doing is slicing it right along through there and then closing it up. I don't know what the best option is for doing it, so we're just gonna have to go with it and see what looks good. Alright, so I ended up pie cutting right above that weld on the gusset and then just straightening up that piece. It kind of had a funky whoopity-woo. So we're going to push this down. Like so. And give it some weld. I figured before I go mounting suspension, stuff like that, we'll try this thing on, see how, a little bit out of breath. Try this thing on, see how it fits, make sure that my measurements, I marked center line of the original front wheels, took a couple measurements off some points on the frame, have them marked, but I want to set the fenders on, double check that those marks look like where we want the tires to be. I looked up the rules for the gassers back in the day, and they did have a little bit of room. I think you could move the front axle and the rear axle an inch each, I think. So back axle stayed the same, just stayed centered in the wheel well. So if I could move the front tires just a little bit forward, an inch forward or so, I think that'd be better. I think you'd have a little bit better view of the fender well header and stuff like that. But anyways, what was I saying? Oh, and I don't have a for sure length on these rails yet. I just cut more than what I knew I needed. I measured from where I cut to the front of the old frame, wherever that piece is over there. Measured that and then added a few inches just so that I knew I would have enough, because I do want the front of the frame sticking out enough where it's not going to have a front bumper where I can mount the moon tank and stuff like that on the front. But anyway, so, and also these frame rails aren't symmetrically long because I ended up sliding this driver's side frame rail forward, so they are squared with each other, and this bar is put in square in between, but this distance from here to there is longer than from there to there because this rail is slid forward. So what I was gonna do is just cut the longer one off to match the shorter one, but the more I thought about it, I thought, well, might as well just toss that front on and see how everything lines up first, and then we'll go from there. So we'll see if we can do that. Before I go ahead and try to hoist this on there, I'm going to see about a plan to remove the inner fender wells, because this ain't going to have them on it, and it'll be easier for me to lift them without it. So we'll see if there's an easy way to get those out without having to cut really anything. But anyways, here we go. I lied. Right when I looked at them, I immediately could tell that the inner fenders and the core support are one piece. So anyways, should fit. I'm going to pull a tape and make sure that we're not going to run into some major issues with setting it onto the new frame. But all that stuff seems like was out wider than these frame rails that we just put in. So I'll stretch the tape, double check, and then we'll get it set up. Oy vey. All sorts of room for activities in there, even though our activities are going to be slammed clear back against the firewall, or maybe into the firewall a little bit. Depends on how rowdy we want to get with this thing. It's turned into a little bit more work than I expected. It was like, oh yeah, just easy. Cut the frame off, put in a straight axle, drop a motor in, build some motor mounts, slap some ladder bars on it. Really, guys? It's quite the project, so we'll just keep biting off bite-sized pieces and see what we can come up with. Give us a little bit of perspective there. Did I tell you guys about this motor? I don't think I did. This motor is a Buick 455. Kind of like the one that we have on the engine stand over here. Other than that, this motor supposedly got rebuilt a few decades ago. Left out on a pallet with a rubber thing over it. Somehow, they didn't finish the build. From the story that I got, they didn't finish the build because they couldn't find rocker shafts for it. But somewhere along the way, somebody pulled the valve covers off and pulled a few of the spark plugs out. So luckily it didn't have rocker shafts in it, so all the valves were closed, and just tapping on the valve stems with a little rubber mallet, they're all freed up. So the valves are free. They probably need guides. But this motor is a 1970 Buick 455, which has the smaller, what would you call them, combustion chambers. The valve size is the same between, because I don't think these are stage 1 heads. The guy that I got it from highly doubted that they were. But it has a few other parts on it. I wanted the older pulleys, the older point style distributor. I'm probably going to put a Pentronics in there and convert that, but I wanted the smaller distributor cap, a little bit more period looking. I like the look of these valve covers a little bit better. Just a few things on that. The oil pump housings and timing cover housings are known to have issues, so I figured, well, why not have an extra one of those? So, long story short, we're still using this motor. We might get stage 1 valves, and if we do that, if we end up going full Monty with it, or later on down the road, decide we want to get stage 1 valves machined, I'll put them in those heads and get those heads built, put them on this motor. We've got the camshaft and everything for when the time comes. If I do this camshaft, I've got to get valve springs and some other stuff. So if I do, when I do the camshaft, I'm going to do the springs and the valves and the heads and all that stuff. But for the time being, my goal is to get this thing rolling with an engine mounted in it, transmission to where it can move around, and then we'll see where we're at with it. But it's a work in progress for sure, and it's definitely going to get done. All that stuff, cam and all that stuff, I'm going to do, but I've got other projects that I need to get done first. So this is kind of just, for right now, the urgency on this is to get it slammed together so I don't just have parts willy-nilly stacked everywhere, taking up space out in the weather or whatever, and be able to have it to cruise around or take to car shows or whatever. So go hit the drag strip for fun. I don't expect this motor straight out of a 74 Buick to really do much, but I think it'll be fun anyways. So anyways, this is what we're looking at. We're gonna be a little bit crazy. I don't think that tire's gonna stick out that far. So anyways, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for supporting. Sorry about the long waiting period that you guys have endured, but we're back out here getting stuff done, getting motivated, getting used to the new work schedule, and trying to fit all of life into the 5-gallon bucket that I have capacity for. So have a good one. Have a good night. Thanks.